They walked away from you. But they never truly let you go. My beloved child, listen carefully, don't skip this message, because there is something about this connection that your heart has understood long before your mind could explain it. They walked away from you, but walking away physically was not the same as letting you go emotionally. They may have created distance, stopped talking, disappeared, acted cold, or convinced themselves that leaving was the only answer, but deep inside, something remained unfinished. There are people who leave because they no longer care, and then there are people who leave because they are afraid of what they feel, afraid of what the connection requires, afraid of vulnerability, afraid of losing control, or simply not ready to become the person the relationship needed them to be. Your soulmate may have walked away, but that does not automatically mean their heart followed them. And perhaps that is why their memory keeps returning to you in the quietest moments, because sometimes the body leaves before the heart has finished saying goodbye. There may have been a moment when you thought, that's it. They are really gone. You may have watched their silence grow longer and longer until you started believing that your entire connection had become nothing more than a memory. You may have checked your phone, wondered whether they would reach out, replayed old conversations, analyzed things you said, and asked yourself what you could have done differently. You may have blamed yourself for caring too much, loving too deeply, or believing there was something special between you. But listen carefully, someone's inability to handle a connection does not automatically mean the connection meant nothing. Sometimes a person walks away because staying would require them to face parts of themselves they have spent years avoiding. Sometimes they leave because they know they are not ready. Sometimes they run because the relationship is asking them to become honest, vulnerable, and emotionally responsible, and that can be terrifying for someone who has learned to survive by keeping their heart protected. Your soulmate may have tried to convince themselves that leaving would make everything easier. They may have believed that if they stopped talking to you, eventually the memories would disappear. They may have thought distance would weaken their feelings. They may have told themselves that they were making the logical choice. Maybe they focused on work, friends, responsibilities, entertainment, or even other relationships just to keep their mind occupied. But there is a difference between distraction and healing. You can fill your schedule and still miss someone. You can smile around other people and still think about one person when the room becomes quiet. You can say, "I'm over it," and still feel something inside you when their name appears unexpectedly. And perhaps your soulmate discovered that the hard way. There may have been nights when they unexpectedly remembered you. Maybe they heard a song that took them back to a particular moment. Maybe they visited a familiar place and remembered standing beside you. Maybe they saw something you would have laughed about together. Maybe they experienced something exciting and instinctively wanted to tell you, only to realize you were no longer there. Those moments can reveal what the heart has been hiding. Because when something important happens, we often think of the people who once mattered most. Your soulmate may have discovered that even though they walked away, you were still connected to some of their deepest memories. And that realization can be uncomfortable. They may have expected themselves to feel relieved after leaving. Perhaps they expected the emotional weight to disappear. Instead, they may have felt something they could not explain. They may have wondered why they still cared about whether you were okay. Why did they still wonder if you had moved on? Why did they still feel a strange reaction when someone mentioned you? Why did they still imagine what it would be like to talk to you again? Why did they sometimes want to send a message and then stop themselves? Because letting go is not the same as disappearing. Sometimes people stop contacting you while still carrying you internally. Sometimes they stop saying your name while still remembering your voice. Sometimes they stop looking for you while still wondering where life took you. Sometimes they leave your life but never completely remove you from their heart. And perhaps your soulmate is in that space right now. They may not know what to do with their feelings. They may be trying to understand whether what they feel is love, regret, nostalgia, guilt, or a combination of everything. They may be asking themselves whether they made the right decision. They may be wondering if they lost something that could have become extraordinary. And perhaps the hardest part for them is realizing that the person they walked away from may no longer be waiting in the same place. Because you have changed too. While they were trying to move forward, you were learning how to stand without them. You were learning how to wake up without expecting their message. You were learning how to stop looking for answers in every silence. You were learning that your worth does not depend on someone choosing you. You were learning that love can be powerful and still not be enough to make an unhealthy situation work. You were learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop chasing someone who has chosen distance. And that growth may be the very thing your soulmate notices if they ever return. They may remember the version of you who was always available, always understanding, always willing to give another chance. But if they come back, they may discover someone different. Someone calmer. Someone stronger. Someone who still has a heart but now has boundaries around it. Someone who can forgive without forgetting. Someone who can listen without immediately surrendering their peace. Someone who no longer believes that loving someone means accepting everything they do. That may surprise them. They may have expected you to remain emotionally frozen in the moment they left. Instead, you kept living. You kept growing. You kept becoming. You may have cried, you may have struggled, you may have had days when you wanted to give up, but somehow you kept moving. And now the person they once walked away from may be standing in a completely different emotional place. This is why you should never underestimate what time can reveal. Time does not always make people forget. Sometimes time makes people understand. When the emotions of the moment disappear, people begin seeing their decisions more clearly. Your soulmate may now be looking at the past without the anger, fear, pressure, or confusion that surrounded the separation. They may be asking themselves different questions. Instead of asking, "How do I get away from this?" they may be asking, "Why did I let this go?" Instead of thinking about what was difficult, they may be remembering what was rare. Instead of focusing on why they left, they may be thinking about why they still care. And that is where regret can begin. Not always regret because they want to return immediately, but regret because they recognize that they handled something precious carelessly. They may remember moments when you tried to communicate and they shut down. They may remember when you needed reassurance and they gave you silence. They may remember opportunities to explain themselves that they ignored. They may remember your patience. They may remember your kindness. They may remember the way you looked at them when you believed in them. And now those memories may carry a different weight. Perhaps they are realizing that they did not leave because you were not enough. They left because they were not ready. That distinction matters. You may have spent months or even years wondering what was wrong with you. Maybe you wondered whether you were too emotional, too caring, too intense, too available, or too hopeful. But sometimes the problem is not that someone loved too much. Sometimes the problem is that the other person did not know how to receive that love. A person can be deeply cared for and still be incapable of accepting it. A person can be loved honestly and still run from intimacy. A person can want connection and simultaneously fear it. Your soulmate may have been caught in that contradiction. They may have wanted you close but feared becoming vulnerable. They may have wanted love but feared losing independence. They may have wanted commitment but feared responsibility. They may have wanted to trust you but carried old wounds that made trust difficult. And instead of explaining all of that, they may have chosen the easiest thing they knew: distance. But distance does not always erase attachment. Sometimes it makes attachment louder. When you were close, they could distract themselves with everyday problems. When you were gone, the silence created space for reflection. They could no longer rely on your presence to reassure them. They had to live with their decision. They had to wonder what you were doing. They had to accept that you might eventually move forward without them. And that possibility may have frightened them more than they expected. Perhaps one of the biggest surprises for your soulmate is realizing that you are not waiting forever. They may have assumed you would always be emotionally available. They may have believed that if they ever changed their mind, you would simply open the door. But life does not work that way. People grow. Hearts heal. Priorities change. And sometimes the person you walked away from becomes the person you are afraid you can no longer reach. That fear can become a wake-up call. They may wonder, what if they are with someone else now? What if they no longer love me? What if I waited too long? What if I apologize and they reject me? What if they have finally found peace without me? Those questions can become very loud. But remember, my beloved child, you should not live your life waiting for those questions to become a message. Your life is happening now. You do not need to freeze your future because someone from your past might eventually return. If they truly want another opportunity, let them demonstrate it. You do not need to chase their realization. You do not need to remind them of what they lost. You do not need to manipulate circumstances to make them miss you. Let them experience the consequences of their own choices. If they miss you, let them sit with that feeling. If they regret leaving, let them understand why. If they want to return, let them find the courage to come forward. And if they do, remember that you are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to say, why now? You are allowed to ask, what has changed? You are allowed to ask, what are you willing to do differently? You are allowed to take your time. Love does not require instant forgiveness. Reconnection does not require forgetting. And an apology does not automatically rebuild trust. Trust is rebuilt through consistent behavior. That is what you should watch for. Not how emotional they become. Not how beautifully they speak. Not how intensely they say they miss you. Watch what they do after the conversation. Do they communicate consistently? Do they respect your boundaries? Do they take responsibility? Do they stop disappearing? Do they make genuine effort? Do they create space for you in their life? Do they show you that they have learned from the past? Because if they truly never let you go, they must eventually decide whether they are willing to do something meaningful about it. Missing someone is a feeling. Choosing someone is an action. Regret is a feeling. Change is an action. Love is a feeling. Commitment is an action. And your soulmate may finally be learning that difference. Perhaps they once believed that loving you privately was enough. It was not. Perhaps they believed thinking about you was enough. It was not. Perhaps they believed they could carry the memory of you forever without ever having to face the truth. But eventually, unresolved feelings demand attention. And maybe that is where they are now. They may be confronting a truth they avoided for a long time: they never truly let you go. They may have removed you from their daily life, but they never removed you from the emotional places you occupied. They may have stopped communicating, but they never stopped remembering. They may have changed their routine, but certain memories still belong to you. They may have tried to move forward, but some part of them still wonders what would have happened if they had stayed. That question can be powerful. What if? Two words can carry years of regret. What if I had been more honest? What if I had trusted them? What if I had stayed? What if I had communicated instead of disappearing? What if I had chosen love instead of fear? What if they were actually the person I was searching for? Your soulmate may be asking those questions. But your responsibility is not to answer them. Their responsibility is to learn from them. And perhaps God, faith, or life allowed the separation because both of you needed to grow separately before understanding what you were asking from each other. Sometimes two people meet before they are ready. Sometimes the connection is real but the timing is wrong. Sometimes the feelings are genuine but the emotional foundation is weak. Sometimes distance becomes the teacher that closeness could not be. You may have needed to learn self-respect. They may have needed to learn accountability. You may have needed to stop chasing. They may have needed to stop running. You may have needed to discover your own identity. They may have needed to discover what they actually wanted. And perhaps that is why the story did not unfold the way you expected. You were both becoming different people. And if your paths cross again, it should not be to recreate the same relationship. It should be to see whether two changed people can build something healthier. That is a completely different story. Your soulmate may return with words you never expected to hear. Maybe they will finally tell you what they could not say before. Maybe they will admit that they were scared. Maybe they will confess that they thought about you more than they ever showed. Maybe they will tell you that they tried to move on. Maybe they will tell you that they wondered whether you still cared. And perhaps you will listen quietly. Not because you do not care, but because you no longer need to prove that you care. You may have spent so much time trying to convince them that the connection mattered. You do not need to do that anymore. If it mattered, they will know. If they miss you, they will know. If they regret leaving, they will know. And if they truly want another chance, they will know what they need to do. This is where your power returns. You no longer have to chase the answer. You can let the answer come to you. You can watch. You can listen. You can decide. And perhaps that is exactly what your soulmate never expected. They may have thought you would always be the one reaching toward them. Now they may be the one reaching toward you. They may have thought you would always be waiting. Now they may be wondering whether you are still available. They may have thought they had control over the connection. Now they may realize that you have a choice too. That shift can change everything. Because love becomes healthier when both people are choosing freely. You should never have to convince someone to stay. You should never have to beg someone to communicate. You should never have to prove your worth. You should never have to compete for basic respect. If your soulmate returns, they should return because they understand your value and are willing to act accordingly. Not because they are lonely. Not because another relationship failed. Not because they want comfort. Not because they are afraid of being alone. They should return because they are ready to build something real. And if they are not ready, then you have every right to continue moving forward. You are not someone's backup plan. You are not someone's emotional safety net. You are not a temporary source of comfort. You deserve a relationship where both people are present. Both people communicate. Both people choose. Both people grow. Both people take responsibility. And perhaps your soulmate is finally understanding that. Maybe they are looking back and realizing that the person they left was not asking for perfection. You were asking for consistency. You were asking for honesty. You were asking for emotional presence. You were asking to know where you stood. And maybe they were unable to give you those things then. But that does not mean they cannot learn now. People can change. But you should never assume change simply because you want it to be true. Let them show you. Let time reveal it. Let their behavior confirm their words. If they truly grew, you will not have to beg them to prove it. Their actions will naturally become different. Their communication will become clearer. Their effort will become more consistent. Their decisions will become more intentional. Their presence will become more reliable. And perhaps that is the kind of return your heart has been waiting for. Not someone coming back with temporary emotion, but someone coming back with genuine maturity. There is another possibility you need to understand. Sometimes someone walks away from you and never truly lets you go, but they still do not return. That can happen too. People can carry love and still choose separate paths. People can regret things and still remain silent. People can miss someone and still be unable to create a healthy relationship. And if that is your story, it does not make your connection meaningless. It simply means that love and compatibility are not always the same thing. Your life cannot be built around someone's potential. It must be built around reality. So if they remain distant, let them remain distant. Do not chase. Do not beg. Do not abandon your life. Keep going. Keep growing. Keep loving yourself. Because the purpose of this message is not to convince you that someone is secretly coming back. The purpose is to remind you that someone else's departure never made you less valuable. You were worthy before they arrived. You were worthy while they were beside you. You were worthy when they walked away. And you remain worthy now. That is the truth you should never forget. Maybe one day they will return and you will have a beautiful conversation. Maybe they will finally explain everything. Maybe you will forgive each other. Maybe you will rebuild. Maybe you will realize that the timing is finally right. Or maybe you will discover that your greatest lesson was learning to release the need for their return. Either way, you become stronger when you stop making your peace dependent on someone else's decision. Your soulmate may have walked away, but they did not take your future with them. They did not take your purpose. They did not take your ability to love. They did not take your ability to be happy. They did not take your worth. They simply became part of your story. And now you get to decide what the next chapter looks like. So, my beloved child, if they truly never let you go, let that realization belong to them. You do not need to chase them into it. Let them understand what your absence taught them. Let them remember the moments they took for granted. Let them face the truth of their own choices. Let them decide whether they are brave enough to come forward. And if they do, do not be afraid. You do not have to become the old version of yourself. You can meet them as the person you have become. You can listen without losing yourself. You can forgive without forgetting. You can love without abandoning your boundaries. You can give another chance without giving unlimited chances. And if they prove through consistent action that they have changed, you can decide whether there is something worth rebuilding. But if they return with the same patterns, you have permission to walk away. Because sometimes the greatest proof that you have healed is not that you can get someone back. It is that you no longer need to. And perhaps that is what will surprise your soulmate the most. They may come back expecting to find the person who was desperately waiting. Instead, they find someone who has learned how to live peacefully without them. Someone who can love them but still choose themselves. Someone who can hear, "I miss you," without immediately forgetting everything that happened. Someone who understands that love must be mutual. And perhaps seeing that version of you will finally make them understand what they once had. Maybe they will realize that your presence was never guaranteed. Maybe they will realize that your patience was a gift. Maybe they will realize that your love was not weakness. Maybe they will realize that your silence after they left was not because you stopped caring. It was because you finally started caring about yourself. And that can change the entire dynamic. So do not chase the person who walked away. Let them walk if they choose to. Let them learn. Let them grow. Let them remember. Let them decide. And you keep moving. Because sometimes when you stop chasing, you finally create enough space for the truth to reveal itself. If they truly never let you go, they will eventually have to confront that reality. And if they are brave enough, perhaps they will reach out. But if they do, remember. A reunion is not the same as restoration. Restoration requires work. A message is not a relationship. An apology is not trust. A memory is not commitment. A feeling is not a future. The future is built by choices. And if they choose you again, let them choose you with consistency. Let them show you. Let them prove it through time. Let them make you feel safe instead of confused. Let them bring peace instead of constant uncertainty. Let them become the person they should have been when they first met you. And perhaps then you will finally understand why everything happened the way it did. Maybe the separation was not the end. Maybe it was a lesson. Maybe it was a mirror. Maybe it was a season of growth. Maybe it was the moment both of you needed to discover what love truly requires. But whatever happens, do not forget the most important part of this entire message: you are not waiting for someone to complete you. You are already whole. You are already worthy. You are already deserving of love that is honest, consistent, respectful, and present. If your soulmate returns, let them meet you there. If they do not, keep walking. Your life is still unfolding. And sometimes the person who walked away returns only after realizing that leaving did not erase the connection. Sometimes they return because they finally understand what they could not understand before. Sometimes they return because time taught them what distance could not. And sometimes they do not return, but you finally realize that you were never supposed to spend your life waiting at a closed door. Either way, the story does not end with their decision. It continues with yours. So breathe. Release the pressure. Stop checking every silence for a hidden meaning. Stop wondering whether you should reach out first. Stop trying to force a reunion. If something is meant to be rebuilt, it will require two people. And if they truly never let you go, they know where the door is. Let them decide whether they are brave enough to knock. And if that knock ever comes, answer only from a place of peace. Not desperation. Not loneliness. Not fear. Peace. Because you have changed. You have learned. You have grown. And you now understand something that you did not understand before. The right person will not make you constantly question whether you are loved. The right relationship will not require you to abandon yourself. The right connection will not survive only through your effort. It will be built together. And if your soulmate has truly never let you go, then perhaps the next chapter will not be about chasing them. Perhaps it will be about seeing whether they are finally willing to walk toward you. Let them show you. Let life reveal it. Let time confirm it. And whatever happens next, remember this one final truth: they may have walked away from you, but they never had the power to walk away with your light. Your heart is still yours. Your future is still yours. Your peace is still yours. Your purpose is still yours. And your story is far from finished. Maybe one day they will return and finally say the words they were too afraid to say before: I never truly let you go. And when that moment comes, you will not need to wonder what to do. You will simply look at them with the wisdom you gain through the silence and ask the only question that truly matters: are you finally ready to stay? Because this time, love should not be about who misses whom more. It should be about who is willing to show up. Who is willing to communicate. Who is willing to grow. Who is willing to choose. Who is willing to stay. And if they are finally that person, then perhaps the story you thought had ended may be ready to begin again. But this time, with truth, maturity, courage, and two hearts that finally understand what they almost lost.